welcome to the Buddhist Boot Camp podcast. Our intention is to awaken, enlighten, enrich, and inspire a simple and uncomplicated life. Discover the benefits of mindful living with your host, Timber Hawkeye.
Those of us who don't work in the medical, emergency, law enforcement, or public service sectors are staying home to stop the spread of this virus. Most of us are accustomed to routine, schedule, and staying busy. So when we were advised to shelter in place, many people didn't know what to do with themselves. It reminded me of my first day at the Japanese monastery. We were shown to our meditation cushion in the zendo. Everyone sat down facing the wall. The bells chimed, and that was it. We were not given any instructions on what to do. There was no visible timer on the wall counting down the minutes. We just sat there in silence and waited for something to happen. And many who've never tried meditating before found this lack of activity extremely difficult to handle. Because we are typically surrounded by physical, visual, and auditory stimuli, it can be a little jarring when everything suddenly stops. But if you've ever meditated before, then you know that the moment you turn off the external, it's not that everything stops. That's when the real work begins, because then you can finally get in touch with what's going on internally. And maybe that's why this practice is so foreign and scary. The hardest thing for people to see is themselves. After we stare at that blank wall for a few hours each day, week after week, that wall became a mirror. It started reflecting back to me everything about myself that I'd been ignoring or hiding since childhood. Even stuff that I thought I'd already worked through and dealt with resurfaced, so I can reevaluate my personal responsibility for how my life has turned out and figure out whose voice was in my head judging my every move. And I finally have to ask myself why I do what I do. I think that's something that we rarely ask. We figure it out. We know what to do. We know what to do next. We have goals and dreams and missions, but we rarely ask ourselves why. Like, where did we pick that up? And that's what I started asking myself. And it empowered me to steer my life in a new direction. I'm more consciously aware of that internal voice now that I've quieted everything else enough to finally hear it. And I think that's where we are. To combat the silence in our current quarantine, many people have unfortunately doubled down on the amount of news that they watch, which immediately backfired, and it sparked panic and anxiety disorders if you didn't already have them. My friend Shelly told me that she's been listening to too much news, drama, and people complaining. So she was looking for some positive vibes. But I think that increasing good vibrations without reducing our exposure to negativity wouldn't necessarily solve the problem. It might just make the highs higher and the lows even lower. So I say eliminate your exposure to sensational hysteria altogether so that rationale and composure has room to settle. You have to make room for it. So I'm not suggesting sticking our head in the sand or wearing rose-tinted glasses. I only suggest that we zoom out to see the big picture. Remember that nothing is ever all bad or all good. Everything is always perfectly balanced somewhere in between. When my own perspective dips a little too heavily on the dark side of doom, for example, then I know that I myself am out of balance. And the benefit of that is I can do something about this. I can't fix the world, but I can do this. So I hope that makes sense, because the invitation is for each of us to find our calm center, and not just find it, but remember where it is so you can bring yourself back to it whenever you veer off track. Then Shelley said that even if she limits her exposure to the news to maybe twice a day or for only 15 minutes or whatever your practice is, she still has a hard time keeping her emotions in check when it comes to the choices that politicians and leaders are making. She gets very upset by the injustices when decisions are made that impact other people's lives. When I'm watching the news and I get so upset by what governments are doing or what countries are doing, I chuckle at my own arrogant thinking that I still pretend to know what's best, or like I know how to run a country out of an epidemic or any kind of political, global, national, or even local challenges. Heck, we are all still struggling to calm our internal struggles. So clearly, I'm in no position to even have an opinion about what's going on in the Middle East, for example. I remind myself that the only thing I know for certain is that I don't know anything for certain. Do you have any idea how liberating that is? I hold the few opinions that I have very lightly. And I reserve room to honor the fact that the opposite perspective is just as true to somebody else somewhere else because of their time, place, or circumstance. So many of you are asking, how do I remain calm? How do I keep this from bubbling over? This is a very good way to do that. By remembering everyone is trying to figure out the best way to have the most fulfilling life possible. So when you're wondering, why is so-and-so doing what they're doing? It's because they think that's what's going to lead to their happiness. They're doing it for the same reasons you're doing what you're doing. Self-isolation goes hand in hand with personal growth. I posted online that one word can change your entire attitude. You're not stuck at home. You're safe at home, meaning you're safe from the virus, not necessarily in a safe environment. Many of us have challenging home environments to deal with, but you're safe from the virus in the sense that one cough can change your life. So change your language around, I'm stuck at home to I'm safe at home. It's for the benefit of everyone else. Like, I'm not worried about myself dying of this virus. I stay home to avoid spreading it or infecting other people. Choosing not to endanger other people, to me, is as logical as stopping at a red light to avoid a collision. People are getting so upset, I don't want the government telling me what to do. The government is always telling you what is in your best interest and what to do. They're telling you, stop at the stop sign, stop at the red light, stick to the speed limit. Now, yes, you may go faster than you're advised to, but yes, you're putting your own life and somebody else's life in danger. And yes, some people are comfortable driving 100 miles per hour on the freeway. We can't tell other people what to do. You can't. You're never going to be able to control everyone. But what you can do is say, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to drive the speed limit. I'm going to stay on the right side. I'm going to stay home until this blows over, until there's a vaccine, until there's a cure. If anxiety has taught me anything over the years, it's that panic never makes anything easier. Carrie asked, what word can you provide those healthcare workers on the front line with how to remain calm when they truly are in the eye of the storm? I appreciate you guys at some point in your life saying, yes, I'm aware of the risks and I want to do this job. I can't imagine a healthcare worker who is not always at risk, who is not always in the eye of the storm. What advice would I give to soldiers in the military, doing exactly what they signed up to do? This is your call to rise. This is your call to do the work, not just begrudgingly, but with a smile. And yes, take all precautions possible. And I'm so grateful that you're the first to get tested should you need it if you start showing any symptoms. You know better than anyone that should you get treatment early on, this is not a death sentence. If anyone was going to be given a life vest, are the ones who are going to be shot at. So as soon as there's a vaccine, as soon as there's some way to protect us, you will be the first to get it. I don't know why doctors and nurses don't wear capes. You guys are superheroes. So I appreciate you. In the same way, when I'm driving down the road and it's raining and it's cold or snowing or 112 degrees out, whatever it is, and I'm watching people doing construction work, and I'm just like, thank you so much for signing up to do that, rain or shine. Farmers picking our fruits and vegetables regardless of weather. I appreciate you guys so much. We are all in whatever field of work we're in. We're in the front line of some danger. That's what I want us to eliminate, is this illusion that we've never been facing danger before, that this is new. This is a new form of danger, but it's nothing new. So get that idea of woe is me out of your head. It's superwoman is me, if you would. And I hope that helps and doesn't aggravate you any further. You are doing, I'm tempted to say, God's work, so to speak. Someone asked, what part does faith play? Faith plays a role in everyday life when you trust that everything is working out the way it's supposed to, not the way you think it should. I have faith that not even that we'll make it through this. If we don't need to make it through this, if us not making it through this, it's what's best, then we won't. Like I'm not attached to any outcome, to any end result, because that would imply that I know what's best. That would imply that I have some ego surrounding around, well, we must survive or we must make it through. It's like, according to whom? Well, according to my ego, of course. So I've got to let go of this idea that my opinion, that my truth is universal. It isn't. There's nothing I hold on to tightly. I don't know how else to explain that. Someone asked, what about hope though? Hoping we will get through it. Okay, Jill, I want to say something that might sound counterintuitive at first, but it's the line from Fight Club that took me the longest to process, to understand, to make peace with. To answer your question, Jill, what about hope? The line that I'm talking about is the one that says, losing all hope is freedom. hope is so self-centered. It is so egotistical, and it is based on your own personal viewpoint of what you think is best. It's no different than say, oh, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow because I have a picnic. Well, the farmer hopes it does rain tomorrow because it waters his fields. The snow skier hopes that it rains here because that means it snows up in the mountains, and then he gets a whole lot of fresh powder to go skiing on. So hope, whatever you're hoping for, someone somewhere else is hoping for the exact opposite. Recognizing that losing hope is the greatest freedom we can have, because we are completely then detached from our own ego and self-centered ultimate truth that we think is applicable to everyone. And it's so liberating to let that go. There's no way I can look through a peephole and see a tiny percentage of what's going on in the world and somehow claim to know what's best. So I don't promote hope that what you think is best is what's going to happen. I'm suggesting having faith that what happens is what's best, that this needs to happen for reasons far beyond our comprehension. That's faith. It's kind of the opposite of hope. I don't know if that makes any sense, but faith means that even if something terrible happens in my life, something that I'm inclined to label as horrible, bad, tragic, so many times in my life have the things that I thought were bad, that were horrible, things that I didn't want, things that I would have done anything to avoid, have turned out to be the best things in my life. So much so that I'm grateful some of the things I used to hope for didn't come true. So abandon hope, embrace faith. People want to know what to do with their fear. When you feed your faith, all your fears starve to death. But when you feed your fears, your faith goes away. When I go and I speak at churches regularly, I often ask the entire congregation, I said, how many of you believe in God? And all of them raise their hand. And then I say, how many of you worry? And they all raise their hand. And I'm like, you can't do both. If you believe in God, if you have faith, then there's nothing to worry about. If you worry, you're second guessing the very thing you say you believe in. Do you see that? To answer Johnny questions, how do you stay positive when our roommates and coworkers are constantly negative? They are serving a purpose as well. They remind me how not to be. I witness people who are freaking out and panic and negative, and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not choosing that. The last question I will answer today, someone said, what type of meditation do you recommend for someone who is new to meditation? Especially since you are new to meditation, the only thing I'm going to suggest is be wary of anyone who tells you there is only one way to meditate or that there's a right way to meditate. The biggest concern I hear from people when they're trying to meditate for the first time is, I can't do it, or I'm doing it wrong, or I tried and I failed. And the only reason people feel like they're doing it wrong is because at some point, somewhere along the way, someone told them that there's a right way to do it, implying there's a wrong way to do it. And if you're not sitting cross-legged or with your eyes half open, or if you're not counting your breaths, or if you're not in full lotus, or whatever it is, if you're not doing that, then you're doing it wrong. And that's just so silly, because the point of meditation is not to control your thoughts. It's to not let your thoughts control you, to bring awareness to what we're talking about, to witness, to sit there and go, wow, I was trying to focus on this mantra or on my breath or whatever it is you're choosing to focus on a piece of art. And my mind just started wondering about what to have for lunch. And then you caught yourself and you brought your mind back to what you wanted to focus on. That is you training your mind to do what you want it to do rather than what it wants to do. And if in a 5-minute meditation, your mind wanders 100 times and you caught it 100 times and brought it back 100 times, that is a successful meditation. That means you did exactly what you're supposed to be doing. It doesn't mean you failed. That means you succeeded 100 times. Congratulations. The only thing is, avoid thinking there's only one way to do it. Meditation can be while you're running, while you're gardening, while you're doing art. It could be while you're sitting still. It doesn't have to look one way. Whatever it is you do, where while you're doing it, your mind doesn't wander, you're doing it right. I've shared on BuddhistBootCamp.com, you can go, there's a mindful kitchen video cast where I share different recipes. And some of them are ridiculous. Some of them I'm peeling almonds one by one. And I enjoy it because that's my meditation. My mind doesn't wander to anywhere else while I'm doing that. I do the same thing with garbanzo beans to make really smooth hummus. Laugh if you want, but that's my meditation. So when you start out, instead of trying to find something else, think first if there is already something you're doing that's meditative for you, start there. Whether it be my mind doesn't wander when I'm building model airplanes. Just find what works for you. Thank you guys for tuning in. There are so many of you who contribute through patreon.com/Buddhist Boot Camp. It's just $1 a month, and it makes a huge difference. It makes the podcast available. It helps me send free books to prisons and schools, and it's not me doing it, it's you guys. So thank you so much for being soldiers of peace in the army of love. Aloha.
Timber Hawkeye is the best-selling author of Faithfully Religionless and Buddhist Boot Camp. For additional information, please visit BuddhistBootCamp.com, where you can order autographed books to support the Prison Library Project, watch Timber's inspiring TED Talk, and join our monthly mailing list. We hope you have enjoyed this episode and invite you to subscribe for more thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being a soldier of peace in the army of love.